Welcome into Locked On Phillies. The Phillies win the series ender in Arizona in a huge way with an 18-run offensive explosion, and now they head up to San Francisco to see Gabe Kapler and the San Francisco Giants. We'll preview that series and talk about the Diamondbacks win on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. Now, happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Vroom. With Vroom, you can buy a car entirely online and have it delivered straight to you, so you never have to go to a dealership again. So next time you need to buy a car, just grab your phone, go to vroom.com, and check out thousands of great cars. Now, first, I owe all of you out there an explanation because Locked On Phillies has been dormant for about 5 days now. I got some tweets and messages like, you okay, bro? You good? Like, what's going on? The Phillies are losing out in Arizona. It's your fault because you're not posting Locked On Phillies episodes. Yeah, I got that. And, fair enough criticism. As you can see, new location here behind me if you're watching on YouTube. If I look like I'm glowing, I got a window right in front of me, so great natural light. If the audio sounds different, well, yeah, I moved apartments, and I was in the process of moving. It took me like 4 or 5 days to get internet. So that's why I haven't been recording, because my internet was shut off at my old place, had not yet been turned on here, and I was in the process of moving about 1,000 things I don't need from my old apartment to my new current place. And nice place. You can see the TV on the wall back there. You can see the clutter on the counter there, the kitchen island. So still in the process of getting settled in here, but got the internet on late yesterday. So podcast today, and we are back. And good thing I didn't have internet the past couple of days, because I would have lost my mind over the Phillies' losses in Arizona. The 7 runs given up in the first game, the not showing up remotely in the second game, both terrible efforts. But they're terrible efforts in a vacuum. We talk about vacuum games. We talked about it with the Mets series. And listen, those type of vacuum series, they don't only happen against the good teams. Sometimes you play a bad team, you play them terribly, a lot of weird stuff happens, and you just have to wipe it. That was a non-competitive series, to use a term that Ricky Batalico, who I was talking to this morning, used to describe what happened in Arizona. None of those games were competitive. It was a non-competitive series both ways. 2 blowouts in favor of the Diamondbacks, 1 blowout in favor of your Philadelphia Phillies. And I don't know, it's just a weird series. The Phillies still won. They avoid the sweep, which is really, really good. And while they should have won that series, and in my opinion, should have had the potential to sweep that series, you get a win. The Milwaukee Brewers lose a game to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you're still alive to have that second wild card spot. So some harm, no foul, I guess would be the expression that we'd use. But let's get into what happened last night. If you didn't get a chance to stay up and watch it, well, you missed a very long game that went till about 1 in the morning. And it saw the Philadelphia Phillies score their most runs of the season. Previously, they had scored 14 was their top. Well, they put up 18 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's going to be a quick recap, as quick as I can make it, of everything that went on in this game as far as the scoring. So in the top of the first inning, let's jump right into it because there's 18 runs to recap. Well, Kyle Schwarber scored on an error that was hit to shortstop. Alec Boehm had hit a ground ball to Perdomo at short, and he bobbled it, tried to throw Alec Boehm out. Then the throw was late. Then the throw was in the dirt and got by the first baseman, so Boehm moved up, or actually Boehm didn't move up. Reese Hoskins moved up to third. Boehm stayed at first because he didn't really see the ball past the first baseman all that well, but Kyle Schwarber scores 1-0 Phillies in the first. Then, well, the Diamondbacks danced out of danger a little bit there. No runs scored for either side in the second. In the top of the third, Bryce Harper had an RBI single to center, scoring Reese Hoskins. Alec Boehm moved up to third, and then Gene Segura singled to right field. Alec Boehm scores. Bryce Harper scores. JT Realmuto moves up to second. It is 4-0 Phillies. Later in the third, Matt Vierling singles to center, scoring JT Realmuto from second. Gene Segura moves up to second. 5-0 Phillies. Then Jake McCarthy, who's been pretty darn good for the Diamondbacks this series, homered to right field in the bottom of the fourth to make it I almost said to make it 383. No, that was the distance of the home run to make it a 5-1 ball game. And then in the top of the fifth, well, the Phillies, they put it out of reach. Well, out of reach by this series standards is relative, but it was out of reach for this night. Gene Segura singled to center, scoring Bryce Harper. So another great at bat by Gene Segura there in the fifth. It's 6-1. Brandon Marsh ripped a triple in the right center gap, scoring Gene Segura, scoring JT Realmuto, moving himself up to third, and it's 8-1. And then a wild pitch in the next at bat, I should say, scored Brandon Marsh from third, 9-1. The Phillies weren't done there, though. Let me catch my breath. It's already 9-1, and we're only halfway to their run total. That's nuts. JT Realmuto hit a ground rule double to left center in the top of the sixth. Scored Alec Boehm, moved Bryce Harper up to third, 10-1. Kyle Schwarber singled to left in the seventh, 11-1. Matt Vierling singled to center, scoring JT Realmuto in the eighth, 12-1. Brandon Marsh RBI single, 13-1 in the eighth. Edmundo Sosa RBI double, 14-1 in the eighth. Brandon Marsh, wild pitch, his second time he scored on one of those, 15-1 in the eighth. Rhys Hoskins, ground rule double to deep right, 16-1 in the eighth. Garrett Stubbs, a deep double down the left field line that barely snuck in there, scores two more, 18-1 in the eighth. You went from 11-1 to 18-1 in the eighth inning, a 7 frame in the eighth inning when your team is already up 10 runs. You know what that is? That's no let up, because the Phillies learned their lesson from when they gave up a 7-run lead in the opening game of this series. You'd love to see that. It's a good sign of growth for this team. You hate the 7 runs given up and the unanswered runs that the Diamondbacks scored in the middle of this series, but you like the bounce back there. Then the Diamondbacks get one back in the bottom of the ninth. Oh, well, who cares? 18-2, final score. That's how it happened. So a great growth in this series by a team that's still trying to find their way late in baseball seasons. The Philadelphia Phillies, while they are a much better team, they should be in the playoffs. Well, you're looking at a team that's still got those thoughts of collapse in the back of their head, and rightfully so. They've done it the past 3 years, so they're still learning this part of the season and how to have sustained success, how to make it to the finish line. They're going to have struggles when they make it to the postseason, and that's a when, not if. They're going to have struggles in the postseason, I'd imagine. It's growing pains. And it is linear. Burst onto the scene and we often. Now we saw the Nashville. So it's possible, but your average team, they work their way up, guard, divisional round, and then move on. Championship Series, and then World Series. So something I've talked about for the way I want to see the Phillies continue to grow this. Keep saying stop the path that the ball club is on to competition. This building of the organization, we'll call it. So this was a sign like, hey, you have an issue in the first game of the series on Tuesday, and then you come out on Monday, then you come out on Wednesday night and you run it up on them to prove that you're not going to fall for that again. That's growth. Now, the one other thing we got to give a shout out to, Bailey Falter was outstanding in the win. 6 1/3 innings pitched, gave a 1 earned run, 6 Ks, no walks. He was really good getting the win. His total line, he only gave up 5 hits. One of those was the home run to Jake McCarthy, so that's unfortunate, but still a great start by him. Now, Bailey Falter left with a trainer after the game, and shout out to Alex Coffey, who covers the team for the Philadelphia. She's with the Inquirer, I believe, and here's the nice thing about Alex Coffey, why you can trust her. Alex Coffey is not a lifelong Philadelphian. She's covered other MLB teams in the past, and I know this is a very communal city, very parochial city. Yet, I got a little bit of news about Philadelphia people from this area. Not always the most unbiased, so knowing that Alex Coffey's been a national reporter for a long time and done good stuff covering other teams all over the place. You can. I trust her opinion a lot. Well, Bailey Falter She says this morning he's fine. He just had some stuff he needed to be worked out with his groin that was just a little bit tender after the start, and he should be good. So that's a good sign for the Philadelphia Phillies. And a lot of people are talking about Falter potentially being a number 5 next year. Hey, he looked like one this past game. So good start by Bailey Falter. Great performance by the offense. And the Phillies are moving on with a 73-58 record to San Francisco and to see Gabe Kapler. Coming up next, we're going to preview that series with our old pal Gabe and the struggling San Francisco Giants and talk about the pitching matchups and why the Philadelphia Phillies, they have another opportunity to win another series and bounce back from this one. We'll discuss that next on Locked On Phillies. All right, it's never okay to drive stoned. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, you can get a DUI. It's never okay to drive stoned. You put yourself and others in danger. You've been using marijuana in any form. Do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. You think it's okay to drive stoned? The truth is your reaction times, they slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Stop kidding yourself. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. I don't know any other ways to hammer it home to you. It's as simple as that. It's just like drinking. You can't get behind the wheel if you've been doing it. Do not create a tragedy. Do not ruin your life or someone else's. Just flat out don't do it. It's not worth it. We want everybody around and healthy and not in jail for this Philadelphia Phillies playoff run. So don't do anything stupid like that. If you've been smoking, if you're high in any way, don't get behind the wheel of the car. That brought to you by the National Highway Transit Safety Administration. Okay, now the Phillies have an off night tonight. They do not play. It's Thursday night as I record this. We'll post this on Thursday, so you'll have this ready to go. And, of course, we'll have episodes the remainder of the week into the weekend. I have so much stuff to catch up on heading into September now as we get down the stretch run. But the attention shifts to the Philadelphia Phillies and the San Francisco Giants, a series that is starting out in San Francisco tomorrow night. It'll be a Friday night late game, and then wonderful for us on the East Coast. Saturday and Sunday's games are both 4:05 p.m. games. 1:05 p.m. starts out there, so day baseball at the Bay, in the Bay, at the Bay, on the Bay. I don't know the proper terminology there. In San Francisco, we'll just say. So it's a 3-game set out there with the Giants, and the Giants have not been terrible this year. They're 61-68, but that's a huge drop-off from last year's team that was just hugely out over their skis when it came to what that team accomplished. They caught lightning in a bottle. They made an incredible run, and they've come back down to earth a little bit. So a team 7 games under 500, you expect the Phillies to absolutely compete against them. And when you look at the pitching matchups, you feel that way as well. So the first game of the series, Kyle Gibson will take the mound, and he'll face off against Alex Cobb. Now, Alex Cobb has not been bad for the Giants so far this year. 34-year-old right-handed starting pitcher from Boston. He's a Bostonian. He'll take the mound, and he's got a 4-6 record, a 3.81 ERA, which is not bad, 115 Ks, and a 1.3 whip. And that is in 111 innings pitched. Now, he's given up 111 hits in those 111 innings. So with 33 walks, that's why the whip is where it is. This is a guy that's going to give up a lot of hits, but he doesn't give up a lot of home runs, only 8 so far this year. So he dances out of danger, pitches to contact a little bit, and he relies on the ballpark, a very pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in San Francisco. And he also relies on the defense for the San Francisco Giants. Now, pitching to contact against this Phillies lineup with a bunch of guys who can hit the ball out of the yard can be a dangerous thing. We'll have to see how that plays out for Alex Cobb and the San Francisco Giants. But this is not a slouch starter. It's just a slightly above average major league arm that the Phillies are going to have to beat. But Kyle Gibson goes for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he's been pretty darn good. He's 9-5 record-wise now, a 4.08 ERA, 114 Ks, a 1.2 whip in 139 innings pitched. I got to give the nod slightly to Kyle Gibson here, but it's a relatively even pitching matchup. I think Kyle Gibson's ceiling is a lot higher than what you're seeing from Cobb, but it's one where the offense is going to be who has to win game one. Let's just, for the sake of argument, we'll call it a wash. So the first game washed out pitching-wise between Kyle Gibson and Cobb. Now, Jacob Junis goes in the second game for the San Francisco Giants, and he's a 29-year-old righty. He's got a 4-4 record this year with a 4.04 ERA, only 71 Ks, so he doesn't strike out that many guys, but he's only thrown 82 and a third innings pitched this year and a 1.15 whip. Now, that's a younger arm than what you were seeing with Alex Cobb, but he's not new to Major League Baseball. In his career, he's thrown 597 Major League innings. So not as much experience as your average guy, but still a guy that's been in the majors for a little bit. He's given up 11 home runs this year, only walked 16. So this is a guy you're going to want to be aggressive against. Not a huge strikeout guy, but a guy that's given up home runs 11 and 82 and a third innings. It says that the offense has a chance to leave the yard against him. So while beating Alex Cobb may be stringing together hits, you could definitely beat Jacob Junis by leaving the yard. Now, I got to give the nod to the Phillies in this pitching matchup because, well, Noah Syndergaard is starting for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he's been just finding wins. Not necessarily on the stat sheet, but when the team plays, he's been finding wins for the Philadelphia Phillies. They just find ways to win ball games when he starts, even if he doesn't give you the best possible outing. And his numbers show it. An 8-9 record, a 3.98 ERA, 82 strikeouts, which is obviously down for him compared to what we saw when he was a New York Met, but gets the job done, and a 1.26 whip. I'm giving this one to Syndergaard based on track record. Then the series ender of this series with the San Francisco Giants, the pitching matchup in this one, well, it's Aaron Nola will take the mound for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he will face off against Jesus Luzardo, who Jesus Luzardo, we know from the Miami Marlins, left-handed pitcher who's got a 3.44 ERA, 73 Ks, and a 1.04 whip this year. Luzardo has been really good for the Miami Marlins, and now being with the San Francisco Giants, you're looking at a guy that has an opportunity to make waves with a new ball club here late in the season. Only a 24-year-old lefty, so a young arm that you could still take advantage of. But he's a talented young arm. Meanwhile, well, the Philadelphia Phillies are looking at, oh, I'm an idiot. Jesus Luzardo is still on the Marlins. I clicked on the wrong name. I was like, that's weird. Why didn't it show anything over? And I don't remember him getting traded. Sorry, it's Carlos Rodon throwing for the San Francisco Giants. And Rodon was a name that was tied very tightly. Sorry about that mix-up, folks. They play the Marlins next, and I just clicked one game too low down on the ESPN page. Carlos Rodon was a guy that was a hot commodity at the trade deadline. A lot of teams looked to pry him away from San Francisco. Nothing materialized for those teams looking to steal him away. And Rodon has been really, really good this year in his 29-year-old season. A 3.03 ERA, 191 K. So a big-time strikeout guy, a 106 whip. This is a great pitching matchup between him and Aaron Nola. And we're going to call this one a wash, too. So a wash in game one between Alex Cobb and Kyle Gibson, a wash in game three between Aaron Nola and Carlos Rodon, not Jesus Luzardo, who the Phillies will see when they play the Miami Marlins starting next week. And then the middle game, I'll give the nod to Noah Syndergaard, but it's pretty close between him and Jacob Junis. You know what that says? The lineup is going to be the difference in this series. The offense is going to be the difference in this series. And in San Francisco, where the ball doesn't fly as well as most California teams, and it's a big ballpark, well, the Phillies, they're going to need an 18-run type performance. Okay, maybe not that much, but they're going to need an offensive power performance in this series to pull out a series win and maybe even a sweep. We'll see if they can get it done. Coming up, finally, we're going to do a little bit of some injury updates. We're going to discuss some stuff going on with Zack Wheeler, with Zack Eflin, guys like that, Seranthony Dominguez, and when we can expect these guys to be back. So we'll talk about that as we wrap up today's Locked On Phillies. All right, so here's the latest what we're hearing with a couple of injuries. Now, Zack Wheeler is scheduled to have his next start coming up on September 7th against the Miami Marlins. I don't believe that will keep him I don't believe the injury list will allow him to come back. Rather, I think his first day eligible to be back is September 11th, which is by the chances the Eagles home opener, if you're a football fan. So they're going to have to find a spot start for Wednesday, September 7th to face Trevor Rogers and the Miami Marlins at home at Citizens Bank Park. And I think that that's probably going to be Bailey Falter again. So I'd imagine that Zack Wheeler's next start will be Tuesday, September 13th against the Miami Marlins in the next series against the Marlins. So that's when I'd expect Zack Wheeler to come back, just getting him more rest for that tendonitis that he's dealing with in his throwing arm. And yeah, we'll just see how that plays out. Everyone's sounded pretty optimistic about Zack Wheeler and the shape he's in, just wanting to get him rest before the stretch run and before the playoffs. Everything I'm hearing is that he's okay and he will be back. So that's good news. Seranthony Dominguez is kind of a dead zone of information. He's still working with the issues that are dealing with his triceps tendon. Do not know when he's going to be back. We're still looking at an absence for Seranthony Dominguez that could be another couple weeks. Looking more at the time period of 2 weeks before the playoffs type of stuff for Seranthony Dominguez. So feeling that out. Now, Bailey Falter, who I said could start September 7th against the Marlins, that open spot in the rotation. He's apparently fine by reports from Alex Coffey. I told you about that in the last segment. And Zach Eflin. We're hearing that Zach Eflin could very well be okay to throw on this road trip. So you might see him in the San Francisco Giants series as a reliever, not as a starter, but he was throwing a bullpen. It sounds like the knee is getting closer to him being able to come back. And we'll see if Eflin can make an appearance to help the team out this year. So that's your little injury report for the Philadelphia Phillies and everything going on there. All good news pretty much when it comes to the injury front. And this team, yeah, they went through their injury bugs, but it seems like they're getting healthy now and just in time for the stretch run. That's good signs. That's your injury update. And that's all we've got for today's Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for bearing with me during the move. And I also want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season, the local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. So search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can check out that work there. Preview the bird season. It'll be great. Well, that's all I've got for you for today's Locked On Phillies, and tomorrow we'll zone in on Game 1 of the San Francisco Giants Philadelphia Phillies series. But until then, I'm Connor Thomas, signing off for another episode of Locked On Phillies.